Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for September 22nd. I'm here to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big Brother 21 live feeds, as well as to go through Nicole's game from start to finish here on Big Brother 21. And unfortunately, the first thing I do have to update you on is that this is the finish of Nicole's game. That yesterday on the feeds, not on the feeds, but we did learn that Nicole lost part 2 of the final 3 HOH to Holly, which means that Holly and Jackson will be heading to part 3 together. They assured one another that they were taking each other, even though there was a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of suspicion. It was discussed that Nicole is the smarter pick, but that neither of them are going to go in that direction. So it is looking as though Nicole is, in fact, locked out of this end game. It was that wall competition where you climb and answer questions about days. Holly beat Nicole by about 4 minutes, I think. So Holly said she was flying up that wall and that she did really well in the competition. So that's it. That's it for Nicole. What are you gonna do? But there's a lot that we can talk about with Nicole's game if we want to go back and go through what Nicole has done in the game. I think a lot of people will be surprised by how much Nicole was doing. This one took me forever to put together. Not all of it was good, but Nicole was always playing hard, much more so than Holly was throughout the season. And I'm sure we're gonna get to Jackson. I'm sure he's gonna have played very hard as well. But let's run through this. Let's commiserate together. As a way of mourning, let's talk about Nicole's game here. Let's do this. So, Nicole came into the game week 1. She did support Jackson for camp director. She was safe from banishment. And she did not fit into the majority. She maintained decent relationships with some people, but she was left out of the big alliances. She was not brought into anything. All of her relationships were individual. She just doesn't fit in. And that's going to be pretty much the most difficult aspect to overcome in her game. But just to start, she did have some great individual relationships, some decent ones at least, especially with Christy, Kemi, Jess, Cliff, Ovi, Nick, and some others. Those were all decent relationships that kept her in the clear. She was well respected and liked by the big alliance, Grateful, that formed that week, and so she was a bottom feeder, but one of the higher ranked bottom feeders. It was something along the lines of Cliff was number 1, she was number 2, and that was going to be keeping her safe for a little while here. Christy is going to win that first HOH. She does not nominate Nicole. But her target is Kat, and then eventually becomes Kemi. Obviously, Kemi is somebody that Nicole is somewhat close to at this point in the game. Nicole does not want Kemi out of the house, but doesn't really have a way of preventing it at this point. So she just kind of continues to manage her relationships. Sam is going to win the veto. This is when we got Cliff talking to the cameras, talking about how when he talked about who his allies were, Nicole was his person. That he wanted to work with Nicole. He hopes it will stick. He hopes they can make it to the end together. That is where he wants to go. Kemi expressed some concern to Nicole about going on the block if the veto was used. Kemi kind of started to realize that things were not looking very good for her, and so Nicole did some digging via her relationships and eventually landed on a conversation with Christy where Christy was freaking out. Why was Christy freaking out? Because of Jack, and Christy did not want to just do what Jack wants, and as we all know, there are many, many things that caused this whole Christy freakout, but Nicole took advantage of it, comforted Christy, let her know that Kemi loves her, and that she doesn't have to make this decision if she doesn't want to. This ends up being the tipping point for Christy. She decides, you know what? I am not backdooring Kemi. It's not happening. I'm gonna go tell Sam that it's not that Kat is leaving because Kemi is staying. Now, as we know, when she went to talk to Sam, it went in a different direction, and they ended up targeting Ovi instead, which was actually really bad for Nicole, unfortunately. Not as bad as maybe like Kemi leaving would have been, but the fact that Kat did not leave is going to haunt the bottom feeders for half the game here, because Kat is somebody who unfortunately was the person holding them back from doing anything against the majority as a sort of mole slash person keeping them down slash person that didn't believe that she was also an outsider. So Nicole, Kemi, Bella, and Jess did discuss forming a women's alliance. This is the first serious big-ish alliance that Nicole is going to be able to be a part of. They call it the Black Widows. They say we cannot tell Holly and Kat because they are not trustworthy. We can't even tell Christy because Christy will tell Holly, and that's no good. So Jess, of course, the next day is going to talk to them all about women's empowerment and how the women should work together, and this is very quickly going to start blowing up. Holly and Kat are very much against this idea of a women's alliance. They do not want to be a part of it. They want to target these women, in fact. And then, of course, this idea of a women's alliance is going to spill into the next week when Bella eventually rats it out fully. So Ovi does end up on the block. Nicole tries to pitch to Nick that Ovi should be the person they keep. Nicole actually would prefer to keep Ovi over Kat at this point. But Nick says, I think Kat is a better person to keep. She is a perpetual pawn. We can just keep using her on the block over and over. Let's just get rid of Ovi. We'll keep Kat. It'll be great. She also goes to Jess. She says, okay, Jess, I really feel like we should keep Ovi. I'm feeling like that's the thing to do. But Jess says, no, Ovi's a liar. He's a flip-flopper. Plus, he's a guy. We got to keep the women around. Ovi's got to go. Nicole has tried with 2 people now. 2 people shot her down. Nicole agrees. All right, Jess, you want Ovi to go? We should keep Kat. Women's alliance thing. All right, I'm down. I agree. And she gives it up. She's not going to try and keep Ovi anymore. The rest of the week plays out fairly straightforwardly for Nicole at the very least. Ovi is going to be evicted. Nicole is a vote to evict him. So in summary here in week 1, it's a fairly slow start for Nicole. She wasn't included in any of the big alliances, but she did have a pretty killer social game to start here. It allowed her to have a lot of individual relationships that kept her pretty safe and pretty active in the game. She starts her working relationship with Cliff here very, very early on. It's something that is going to be it's something that's going to prove incredibly valuable to her as the game moves forward. She does help save Kemi from being backdoored, which was a clutch move. If only it didn't just happen the next week anyway. And she did end up joining a women's alliance, but it was kind of doomed from the start, given that Jess and Bella were both included in it. So what are you going to do? At this point in the game, Nicole is targeting Jack and Tommy. She feels like those are the 2 most central figures in the house, and she would like for them both to not be trusted anymore and or targeted if possible. At this point in the game, she is being targeted by Nobody's coming for Nicole at this point. She should be pretty safe moving forward. Nicole's influence over the week's outcome. She had a decent role in keeping Kemi from being backdoored. Again, she was the tipping point. She wasn't the main cause. There were a lot of factors that came into it, but she was that tipping point. So that's about the influence she had on the week. Everything else was mostly her own game, keeping herself safe. Obviously, she was not able to influence anything to keep Ovi safe. So that was about it. Heading into week 2, Jack is going to win the next HOH. Jack has no interest in targeting or nominating Nicole. However, he is going to be going after 2 of Nicole's closest allies, both Jess and Kemi, and that's not great, of course. Now that Ovi has been evicted, Camp Comeback was announced. Ovi stays in the house, and David appears in the house as well. Nicole never really has much of a relationship with David, but she does work on Ovi. Now that Ovi is evicted and nobody else is talking to him, Nicole is one of the first people to get to work on him after Cliff, and she lets him know that, hey, Ovi, there were people in this game that were blowing smoke with you. Tommy and Jack, you cannot trust them. You shouldn't have trusted them. If you come back into the game, you should no longer put your trust in them. This is what opens Ovi's eyes for mostly the first time in regards to Jack. And he is and Tommy, and he feels betrayed by them, and he decides, you know what? Screw those guys. Nicole, I'm working with you and Cliff. Those were the only 2 that came up to him and let him know what was going on. And so his loyalty is now to Nicole and Cliff. This is eventually going to fairly quickly spawn the Fellowship of the Zing during this week. Jess and Nicole are going to discuss how they feel very sketched out by Kat. They don't trust Kat still. Obviously it would have been great if Nicole and Jess had been able to get rid of Kat the week before, or at least Nicole at this point. But they feel like Kat's all over the place. Best not to be too associated with her. They would like to keep Kemi safe this week if possible. They're kind of feeling like it's going to be Kat and Kemi on the block, and that if possible they would like to evict Kat over Kemi. Kemi is going to tell Nicole that she thinks Jack eventually tells Kemi that she's essentially going up on the block, and she's going on the block because he knows that she's coming after him and Jackson. Kemi is like, okay, so somebody ratted me out because I am going after them, but I haven't told that many people. I've only told like the women, and I've told Nick. And so Kemi tells Nicole that she thinks it must have been Nick. Nick must have ratted me out. Damn it. And she's right to a degree, but unfortunately for Kemi, it was Bella that had ratted her out far earlier. And she's only going to find that out a little bit later in the week when it's unfortunately too late. So Bella is going to go and talk to Jack as well. Jack implies that he knows about a women's alliance, and Bella immediately just spills all the beans. She says, yes, it was called the Black Widows. Jess started it. I didn't even want to be in it, but whatever. But now I'm telling you because grateful. And so Bella then goes down to Nicole and rats out the fact that she ratted them out. And she says, hey, Nicole, I just ratted out the Black Widows. I hope you don't mind. He already knew, and so I was just worried that I would get in trouble if I didn't come clean, so I just had to come clean to him, and now I'm coming clean to you because I'm a rat. Nicole is very annoyed about this. She goes and tells Jess, who is also very pissed about the situation. They don't really trust Bella anymore, and they never will after this moment. Nicole starts putting distance on that whole women's alliance thing. She realizes that this is a big mess. I don't want any part of this. This is no good. So she starts moving closer to Cliff and Ovi. They talk with Ovi about how to disrupt the power structure in the house. They recognize that there is one big alliance that is running the show, and they don't know how to stop it at this point. They need to figure out how to break things up. both Cliff and Nicole do agree. They think they're doing a pretty good job of staying low on the hit list in terms of who that big alliance is targeting, and they're both correct. As I mentioned, Cliff is basically the person safest from Grateful, after maybe Sam, and then it's Nicole. Those are the two safest people in the house from that big alliance. They are doing a good job at that point, but they agree it's not going to last, so they do need to eventually come up with a plan to break things up. They need to figure out how to do that. So Nicole's idea is, hey, this whole Jess and Bella struggle that's happening right now. Bella's outing this women's alliance. It's really looking sketchy on Bella. Maybe Jess can blow Bella up if we can get the big alliance to not trust Bella and therefore Nick. Then maybe we can split them up that way. Maybe we can get the one side to target Nick and Bella, and with them Sam, and that would be a nice split, and that would keep us safe for a bit longer as we split the rest of the house. They had a pretty monumental task in front of them here. Obviously, it was two people who were still in the game versus literally an entire house. Like I said, they didn't really fit in with the majority of the people. They only had individual relationships, and that meant that it was a large mountain to climb here, and they were just at the bottom of it at this point in time. So they like that. They say the more Bella gets outed, the more fractures there will be. They just need to get Jack and them to turn on Nick and Bella, and things will be all right for now. Nicole does work on this a bit. She tells Christy that Bella was the one that started Black Widow, so she doesn't understand why Bella then ratted it out herself. And that actually was a piece of information that Christy was not aware of, and it did actually help further solidify an already cracked group within Grateful, and really solidified 6 shooters as their thing, and that they were definitely targeting Nick and Bella as soon as Camp Comeback ends. They had already been thinking about it. They had already had this 6, but this whole situation with the Black Widows and the little pieces of information from Nicole definitely helped solidify this group to go against Nicole, against Nick and Bella. Kudos to Nicole for that one. Kemi eventually does end up on the block and finally figures out that it has been Bella that's been ratting her out the whole time. She commiserates with Nicole about this. Nicole's like, yeah, that's Bella for you. So Nicole thinks that Kemi's best chances are to continue to play into the anti-Bella movement. Now, Nicole is trying to do 2 things at once. She's trying to A, save Kemi, and B, if that's not possible, use Kemi to continue to instigate between the 2 sides, Nick, Bella, and the other side, the 6 shooters essentially. And that if Kemi can keep throwing shade on Nick and Bella, then that will be good for her and essentially the house. So Kemi finally at this point knows she can't trust Bella. All of her eggs are now in the Nicole basket. She says Nicole is the only one I can trust. Nicole ends up doing some digging. She's trying to figure out what are the chances. What does Kemi have? Is she the target? Is there any chance of saving her? She goes to Holly, who stonewalls her, but Nick does reveal to her, yeah, it's not looking good for Kemi. She doesn't have the votes. So Nicole goes back to Kemi and they start plotting. They need Kemi to make nice with Jackson, and then Nicole will try to bond with Holly, and they will try to get them to flip on Nick and Bella, and if they do that, then maybe they would be willing to keep Kemi around. Again, this is a plan that works 2 ways for Nicole. It helps keep Kemi in the game, and it also helps break these big groups up if possible. Unfortunately, though, this is the time where Cliff Notes are exposed, and Cliff becomes a big target in the house. Despite this, Nicole and Kemi's work against Bella does strike true. Jack and Jackson are now talking about targeting Nick and Bella even before Cliff. Cliff's notes were exposed. Cliff is a big target, but Jack and Jackson discuss, it's still got to be Nick and Bella before Cliff. Before even Cliff, after all that he said in those Cliff notes. Unfortunately, though, this does not help Kemi. It does not change their minds about Kemi at all. Kemi hasn't really done too much anti-Bella and Nick campaigning at this point. Maybe if she had, that would have made a little bit of a difference, but unfortunately, the deck was stacked against her at this point. So now that Cliff has become a big target, 6 shooters have actually found their new favorite bottom feeder, and her name is Nicole. This actually really benefited Nicole to a severe degree, because Nicole essentially is going to take Cliff's spot where Cliff was, and they begin to reel Nicole in even more. Jack is going to start to work on Nicole. They all talk about how much they love Nicole. So now Nick is trying to pull Nicole in, so that so Nicole is the person they're all going to. Each side, essentially. And so Nicole is being pulled in by Nick. And Nick is trying to get her to target Holly and Kat. And then Jack is trying to pull her in against against Nick and Bella. Holly is now working on Nicole against Nick and Bella. And all of a sudden, Nicole finds herself in the middle of the split that she encouraged between the two sides, 6 shooters and the outsiders of Grateful. And so she ends up giving Holly the heads up that Nick is putting her name in her mouth, and again further encouraging this split in Grateful. In the meantime, again, all of Grateful, we love Nicole so much. It's crazy just how dramatically things shifted as soon as Cliff lost his spot there from the sort of safety of Grateful. Sam does decide to make a last-minute play to save Kemi. He gets Nicole on board, who says that she can get Cliff on board. She does. She talks with Cliff and Ovi about this big group and how it seems to be splintering, and that's a very good thing. Nicole is going, or Nick though eventually lets Nicole know the flip is dead. It's not working. Holly insists, shut it down. Nicole then goes to Sis and Holly to try and make a final plea, but they shut her down as well, and the flip is dead. However, at this point, Sam is going to give Nicole the heads up that there is an alliance of 8. He's been told by Bella at this point, and Jack accidentally referred to them when talking to him in the storage room. Sam doesn't give a ton of information. All he says is that there is an 8, and they are not a part of it, and that Jack is the one that messed up and said it in front of him. Unfortunately for Nicole, Christy is going to start to get a little bit suspicious of her after all the running around that happened during the day of the eviction for Kemi when Sam was trying to flip the votes. Nicole was working hard to try and make that happen, and that is going to lose her some trust with Christy, who is paranoid as always. So Nicole and Kemi discuss trying to have Kemi say that she's targeting Nick and Bella, but unfortunately at this point it's too late. And Kemi is going to call Nick and Bella out on her way to Camp Comeback as she is evicted, and Nicole reluctantly votes to evict her. So in summary here, week 2, Nicole is forced to eject from Black Widows and repositions with Cliff and Ovi. Then she gets blown up by Cliff Notes, but it actually works to her benefit as she's able to take Cliff's spot in the majority, or with the majority. She then uses that spot and the information gleaned by the Fellowship of the Zing to encourage the divide in Grateful to a serious amount of success. She then tries to save Kemi, but does end up exposing herself a little bit in the process, ultimately failing, and Kemi goes home. Nicole at this point is targeting Jack and or really anybody that will help break up the majority. She's being targeted by nobody still. Nobody's coming for Nicole quite yet. Nicole's influence over the week is that she tried and failed to save Kemi, but she did play a somewhat significant role in the events of the week, both with the Grateful split and everything else. So, decent amount of influence here, but not going to help Kemi, unfortunately. So, heading into week 3, Nick is going to win the HOH. Nick loves Nicole. He would never put her up. So that's not an option for Nick. It's actually going to be the only time Nicole ends up on the block. So who knew? Somebody cast a rogue vote. Who could it be? I don't know, but whoever it is, they're probably trying to blame it on Nicole. That's the conclusion we're reaching here in the house. So Jackson is obviously the person that cast the rogue vote. He is going to try to pin it on Nicole, but all of Grateful immediately assumes that Jackson, that whoever did it is trying to pin it on Nicole. Cue Jackson, who goes, "Hey, I think it was Nicole. I don't know. She was being really sketchy. I think it was definitely Nicole." Then Nicole walks in, and she's to convincingly deny the fact that she does it, and Jackson just immediately backs down. Oh well, yeah. I mean, I guess it wasn't him or her. I mean, it's not important. I mean, it's really important, but it's not. It's not important. Okay, whatever. So that didn't really work out too well. Nicole and Cliff are going to discuss the big alliance. She talks to Cliff. She says there's an alliance of 8. So it must be here. Oh my God. It's the 4 couples. It's Nick and Bella. It's Tommy and Christy. It's Jackson and Holly. It's Jack and Sis. Damn it. This is not good. All right. Well, they've got to continue to try to make sure that Grateful breaks up, that Nick and Bella continue to be split from the rest of the group. That's the current goal. Nicole brings this information to Kemi, who finally lets Nicole know about Cliff Notes being exposed. And Nicole's like, oh my God, that makes things make even more sense now because people were acting real weird. Nicole encourages Kemi to keep blowing up Nick and Bella's spot to keep the pressure on this divide that they have helped create within Grateful. So at this point, Nicole is going to talk to the cameras and... oof. She says, I'm a effing idiot. I should have seen this coming sooner. I should have seen this alliance sooner. I always watched the show and I thought people were idiots for not seeing the big alliances, but then I got wrapped up in my own perspective and relationships. I never stopped to step back and look at the big picture. Now I'm finding myself caught in between the middle of Nick and Holly and I'm not sure where to go. She doesn't know where to go. Between Nick and Holly, she's in the middle of it. She needs to apply pressure so that the rift does not heal within Grateful. Nick has run back to Grateful after Kemi's call out. He felt very insecure about his position in the house and ran back to Grateful. Not to mention the fact that he still feels like he's not able to take a shot at somebody like Jack while Camp Comeback is still in play. And so he's trying to play nice with them. It's seeming like that rift may heal, and Nicole needs to make sure it doesn't. So she says, hopefully I can position myself to start stabbing people from behind. That's what I've got to do. So she makes a play on Holly. She tells Holly, I've just gotten in my head about my social awkwardness. But I feel really good about you and Jackson. I just feel like I've opened up to the wrong people in this house. And now I regret it because they're using me. And I just feel like I've messed this whole thing up. And Holly takes the bait. She guesses that Nicole is talking about Nick. Nicole's, yeah. And Kemi wasn't even lying about that Nick and Bella stuff. That's the thing. Holly's like, listen, we know that she wasn't lying. We know about it. There's just nothing we can do. He just won HOH. But don't worry, we're going to do something about it soon. Something would have been done if he had not won HOH. And they bond some more. Nicole is then going to talk to Nick. He promises that she will not go up on the block, even as a replacement. Nicole is finally going to tell Cliff that the Cliff Notes were exposed. Cliff is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He starts doing some damage control. Then right before the nomination ceremony, Nicole is going to take the information gleaned from Holly and some others, and she's going to make a play. She's going to tell Nick and Bella that the others in that group are coming for them, and that if they had not won the HOH, that they would have been targeted, and that's just the way things are. It almost succeeds. Nick says he really was taking his time considering which person he was going to nominate. He almost nominated Jack and Jackson, but ultimately decided he couldn't do it without talking to them first. After the nomination ceremony, Nick had put up Jess and Cliff instead, and Tommy catches on that something is up. Something is wrong. He investigates. He digs it out of Bella that it was Nicole that dropped this information on them, and this explodes into undeniable. Everything that Nicole has told both Holly and Nick comes out into the light. She is exposed as the person playing the middle, trying to create cracks in the game. None of it's particularly false. It's just the way that it happened, and basically she's taking the fault for it. They're saying that Nicole was lying, but Nicole wasn't lying. She was using the truth to create these cracks and widen the gaps and all of that. So Nicole is taking the fall for everything. That's a Dan Giesling right there. That's a Dan Giesling. She lied about her grandmother. She's Vanessa Russo. Oh, man. They start getting very oh, God. Jack is screaming constantly. Jackson's hitting things. Christy's freaking out. Tommy's freaking out. Sis is like, that effing bee. I'm going to go hit her. Let's go. I'm going to go. And we're all just like, sis, why? What does this have to do with you? They're being very loud upstairs. Nicole realizes it's definitely about her. She just tried to make that move. It definitely failed, and now it's being exposed. She goes upstairs to try to defend herself, but Jack shuts the door on her in her face at Holly's urging, and she goes back downstairs, very upset. Cliff comforts her. He says, remember, it's just a game. I love you. We'll be friends forever. Nicole tells Cliff he's the only one that realizes they're still human beings. Cliff says, don't worry, Nicole. They can say they're together all they want, but that does not mean they will actually stay together. Just have to be patient. Nick now wants to backdoor Nicole. He's buying into the fact that it's all Nicole's fault. He doesn't want to admit to himself, I think, that he was on the outs and it was his fault. To a degree. Nicole is still upset, though. She tells Christy and Tommy that it was cowardly that they didn't let her in to defend herself. Christy says, it was for your own benefit. We were just protecting you. Nicole sobs. She tries to get into the diary room, but they don't let her in. So Kat comes and comforts her in the storage room. Nicole says, Kat, we're on the bottom, and the people on the bottom need to see what's going on. We need to do something about it. After Nicole leaves, Kat rolls her eyes. She's later going to say that, how dare she? How dare she say I'm at the bottom? I'm not an outsider. And in fact, this conversation is going to be the reason why Kat is going to start targeting Nicole, because how dare she call her an outsider? Tommy is going to then mediate a Nicole and Bella confrontation, which ultimately amounts to Bella just yelling at Nicole and refusing to let Nicole respond. How dare you do all these things? You're the worst. You used your anxiety. You suck. Blah, blah. Nicole's like, okay, can I respond to that? No, you can't. I've said my piece and I'm leaving now. Was you just going to yell at me and then leave and I'm not allowed to respond? No! Goodbye! And then she goes, and Bella goes and talks about how, you know, I was so good in there. I kept my calm. Tommy agrees. Oh, you were so well spoken, Bella. That was amazing. I'm obsessed with it. Tommy and Christy, though, agree that Nicole is telling the truth. She's telling the truth about their side. She's probably telling the truth about the other side. And the way that Bella's acting surely makes it seem like she doesn't want Nicole to let her side out. So they tell the rest of Six Shooters about it. And they're considering keeping Nicole. But they don't really want to. They don't want to have to expose themselves if they don't have to. Nicole's going to continue to do damage control, though. In the meantime, Kemi and Ovi discuss how wrong it is what's happening to Nicole. It's terrible. And at the same time, Bella and Kat are discussing how America must see Kemi and Nicole the villains that they are. Oh, Bella and Kat, we hope that America destroys Kemi and Nicole. They're villains. America must destroy them. Nicole apologizes to Bella. She says, I did not use the word bully. I did not try to make you out to be bullies. I did spill some information. I apologize for that, though. Bella says, no, that apology's not enough. I'm very disappointed in you, Nicole. Very disappointed in you. This goes back to what I was saying the other day, I think, with Puya. Really tells you a lot about a person when you apologize and they keep digging. No, I need more. Especially when it's not your fault in the first place. Nicole's like, I'm sorry. I really did not intend to make you out to be bullies. I said that I felt intimidated, or interrogated, and in that moment, other people used the word bully. Bella says, why do you sound so defensive, Nicole? At this point, Nicole, she loses it. Why can't you speak to me like an educated adult then, Bella? Now you're calling me uneducated? On top of everything else? How dare you, Nicole? You're calling me uneducated? Nicole's, yeah, I am. You think I'm the one lying because all these other people are telling you that I am, but obviously those people are not going to tell you, they're not going to admit that they're the people that did it when you two are in power, obviously. So yes. After Nick interrogates her some more, Nicole finally snaps again and says, you know what, Bella? It's you. It's you. You are the snake that was behind all of this. Nick, you can go far in this game, but you are getting dragged down. This finally solidifies it for the Six Shooters who, again, were mediating these conversations. And they decide Nicole's right. After Nicole says that, they agree Nicole is right. Bella is the snake. We're keeping Nicole. We have the votes. It doesn't matter. We're blindsiding them. Nicole is now completely clean of what happened. They don't even believe that she intentionally tried to pin the sides against each other. They believe what she says when she says that she was just looking for a place to land. And so she's totally clean here. Except for Kat. Because Kat now wants Nicole to go because she called her an outsider. Kat is going to campaign to Cliff, saying that, Cliff, I need Nicole to leave. She called me an outsider, and I am not an outsider, and she needs to go. Kat uses the veto on Jess. Nicole does go up on the block. Holly and Sis discuss at one point how Kat and Jess are idiots for not trusting Nicole. Kemi and Nicole are going to hang out a lot this week. Nicole, she did all of her damage control. She did everything that she could, but it seems like it didn't work. Nobody's telling her that she's staying. She realizes that it's probably a lost cause, so she ends up just hanging out with Kemi. Seeing how things play out, which leads to the eviction, where Nicole is blindsided when she stays. Cliff is evicted. Who knew? So in summary here in week 3, Nicole and Cliff, they figure out Grateful. They work to prevent their reunification. Nicole makes a play. She's working in between Holly and Nick. She makes a play on Holly, gets some information, makes the play on Nick, uses the information, but it backfires dramatically so. However, after that, she does some excellent damage control, fully recovers, but is still blindsided by her survival. So at this point, Nicole is targeting, again, really anybody that will help break up the majority. She does not hold a grudge against Nick and Bella. She's being targeted by, somehow, nobody again. And her influence on the week's events are pretty major. She wasn't in the driver's seat, but she did help keep the separation between the two sides of Grateful. She got nominated and then essentially saved herself. So, pretty major influence over the week's outcome there. Heading into week 4, Tommy and Christy apologized to Nicole for not telling her that they were keeping her, but they had believed her all along. Christy tells her about her power. Then Cliff is going to win the HOH. He's going to tell Nicole, Kat, and Jess they need to stick together. They may not like Nick and Bella, but they'll need them as numbers. He tells privately to Nicole that he needs to take the shot at the 6. She says, look, I get it. You know, I'm going to keep playing up that I'm working with them because they just saved me, and we can work that. But no, what you're saying makes sense. We need to have the two sides continue to go after each other. It doesn't help us to eliminate the Nick and Bella side for them. So Cliff nominates Jack and Jackson. In the meantime, Tommy is going to work on Nick, and he actually reels Nick back in after blindsiding him. Nick wants to work with Tommy and against Nicole. Jackson wins the veto, which freaks Nicole out because Jackson won the veto, Christy can use her power, force Bella on the block, and Nicole at this point mistakenly assumes that the votes would be there to evict Jack, even if Bella goes on the block, and that she would be the swing vote. She prematurely reveals to Christy that she doesn't think she can vote with them if it comes down to that. It was a very brief stint playing the middle here, playing both sides here with Nicole, and she immediately outs herself when she doesn't even have to. Christy says she understands and she wants a dream team of herself, Tommy, Cliff, Nicole, Jess, Kat. Nicole said she would love that, but not true, because Christy is going to spread the news that Nicole is not really with them, that she wants to vote against them if she can. And so once again, she's going to lose her position within the 6 shooters, or at least with the 6 shooters, I should say. And that's not going to be very good for Nicole moving forward. So Cliff runs the idea to Nicole of making a deal with Christy to put Bella up himself. She agrees with the idea. She says, you know what? You should do it, Cliff. They reaffirm their loyalty to one another. They are still a final 2. And Nicole talks about it with Jess, this idea of making the deal. They agree they don't even trust Bella anyway. So I guess it is what it is. They realize now that they don't have, or Nicole realizes now that they don't have Kat's vote. They definitely don't have Jess's either, so Bella's going home. Nicole tells the cameras that she's proud of Cliff. She wants to sit next to him in the final two. That man is a treasure. Bella is going to campaign to Nicole. Nicole tells Bella, look, I'm on board, but you don't have Kat, and without Kat, you have nothing. And I don't want you to tell people that I'm on board too, because I don't want you to blow up my spot. Nicole, why are you trusting Bella like that? Bella and Nick do apologize to her because turns out she was right all along, though privately Bella says she still feels justified for everything that happened because Nicole used her anxiety. Cliff and Nicole don't understand why they can't get Kat on board. She's enabling the big alliance. With Kat's support, they could take out Jack this week. They don't understand. So they don't see the Holly and Kat connection. Kat pushes, I mean, honestly, even with the Holly and Kat connection, I'm not sure it was the best move for Kat to keep Jack here, but regardless, Kat pushes them for them and Jess to make an alliance. She wants it to be called Cliff's Angels. Cliff hates it, but is not able to stop the momentum, because how do you say no to an alliance when everyone else wants to go? So, Cliff's Angels formed. With Bella on her way out the door, the six shooters are already starting to turn on Jackson next. Doing no small part to some work that's happening behind the scenes that Nicole is not aware of with Cliff and Kat, as they are both inserting things and spreading information back and forth, essentially doing what Nicole was doing the previous week with Nick, Bella, and Holly. They are now doing that with Jackson and Christy, and helping widen that gap and making sure that Christy and Jackson are against each other, which is working. Unfortunately, Nicole's name is going to get tossed around by Bella when she campaigns to Jackson and Holly as a vote that she has, and that is going to come back on Nicole later. So Bella is evicted. Nicole does vote to evict her. In summary here, week 4, Nicole finally has a bit of power as Cliff wins the HOH, but it's quickly stripped away by a twist. She makes a big blunder, huge blunder with Christy, losing her position with the 6 and puts her on the hit list for the 6 shooters. Big mistake. First big real mistake that Nicole is going to make in the game. She gets pulled into Cliff's Angels, and that's about her week here. Nicole is still targeting Jack and or whoever helps break up the big alliance. She's being targeted by still nobody directly, but she is now a lot of people's 3rd or 4th choice of target. She's expendable. A lot of people now talking about targeting Jackson, Holly, Nick, Sam, and Nicole. Those are the people on the hit list. So, heading into week 5, Holly is going to win the HOH. And Jackson tells Holly she should put Nicole on the block as a pawn, because it's not as bold, and Holly shouldn't make too bold a move. He wouldn't do it, but she should. But she doesn't really want to at the moment. She wants Nick gone, and she wants to make sure that Nick goes home. She does not put up. She decides to go with the bigger and bolder move, which is putting up Nick and Sam. Kat, though, is also going to start pushing for Nicole to go. Now, there was a little bit of exposure that happened with Jackson and Holly as they were considering Bella's pitch to keep her, and Nicole's name got thrown around. And so when that got out, it was Nicole that once again was ready to take the fall. And they tried, Kat, Holly, and Jackson all tried to use Nicole as their scapegoat, saying that Nicole was the one that was campaigning and pushing for things to happen. But it doesn't work this time. 6 shooters no longer going to fall for, they didn't even fall for it the first time. They're definitely not going to fall for it the second time. And so Kat's sort of pitch that it's Nicole, not going to work with 6 shooters, but it does work with Holly. And so Kat for whatever reason, not only wants to scapegoat Nicole, but actually does want her targeted and gone. She tries to get Holly to put up Nicole, but does not quite succeed, even though she does tell Holly that Nicole can't be trusted. She doesn't have y'all's backs, and she spills Cliff's angels to Holly as well. So in the meantime, Nick and Sam are nominated, and oddly, what happened here, that with Kat trying to blame Nicole and Six Shooters not buying it, the Six Shooters actually start to then turn around on Nicole again, because basically they were concerned that Nicole was actually working with the other side, and that she would have voted Jack out if she could. But now that Jackson and Holly and Kat are trying to blame Nicole for all this nonsense, they realize she's probably not working with the other side as much. She probably is just looking for a place to land once again, and they're back on board with kind of liking her. Most of them, at least, to a degree. Besides, they'll need her to go after Jackson and Holly. If she's anti-Jackson and Holly, if Jackson and Holly are anti-Nicole, then that's good for them. So Sam pitches to Sis that he would go after Nicole and Jess if he stayed. And Sis, being Sis, she's now developing a relationship with Sam. And because Sam is saying that he'll target Nicole, that means Nicole is the devil. Sis was never the person that believed Nicole. She just went along with what Tommy and Christy said. Sis is still very anti-Nicole, and this Sam campaign is only going to make that more dramatic. Holly is going to then consider backdooring Nicole on Kat's advice. Sis is going to campaign to Holly that Nicole should go as well, because that would save Sam. And Holly is seriously considering this. Nick, having won the veto, is coming off the block, and so her target is gone. Sam is going to be campaigning to Holly, and Holly kind of wants Sam to stay because Sam is going to go after Christy, and she's worried about that, and she's worried about Christy, and she thinks that Sam can be an ally for her. So she's really heavily considering getting Nicole out of the game. And at this point, Nicole is going to break down to Christy and Tommy. She tells them that she just doesn't know. She's been afraid ever since the big blow up, and she doesn't know where to go, and she feels like she's not allowed to talk game anymore because it's just going to blow up in her face. She doesn't know what to do. They tell her, you need to take a stand, and you can talk game with us. You have us. After that conversation, Tommy and Christy really go to work protecting Nicole. They feel like she's a number for them, and if Holly takes a shot at her, that's kind of like Holly taking a shot at them, because it's proving that Holly is not loyal to their cause, because Sam needs to go. So Christy and Tommy do a lot of work to make sure that Nicole does not end up on the block, and in the meantime, Cliff and Nicole discuss their options. Nicole is considering going to Jackson and Holly and ratting Christy and Tommy out. That they're targeting Jackson and Holly, and if she goes and tells them that, then maybe something can happen. The problem is, that's what she did with Nick and Bella, and it completely blew up in her face. So she's thinking, I probably shouldn't do it again. I feel like I'm just the one that's going to take the fall for it. Cliff says, don't worry. I've got something in the works. The split is coming. Just be ready to take advantage of it when it does. So they hold, or at least she holds. Cliff is still working. Tommy and Christy successfully keep Nicole off the block, which means Kat is going to go on the block as she volunteered. Six Shooters pretend to be targeting Nick and Nicole next, but they all have their own agendas, except for Sis, who actually does want Nicole gone. Cliff and Nick are going to strategize this week. They have maintained a decent relationship since Cliff's HOH. Nick says that he wants to go back to the Six. He trusts Tommy. He wants to go work with them. He wants to bring Cliff in too. He thinks that they can get that working together. They can make it happen. Cliff says, no, that's not a good plan. Cliff tells Nick what we need to do is support just one of the couples. Support one of the couples and have them go after, as we support one of the couples, to go after the other two, right? That's what we need to do. Cliff also tells Nick, and I know you have an issue with her, but we need Nicole. We need Nicole. Nicole can help us. Nick isn't super solid on that idea, but he eventually agrees with Cliff's encouragement. Okay, I won't go after Nicole. We can keep Nicole. We'll choose one couple. If Nick had his choice, he would choose Tommy and Christy. Cliff is open to anyone. So, with Cliff's encouragement, Nick starts working on Nicole. I always wondered where Nicole and Nick's relationship started. Turns out it was here. He said his plan is to backdoor Jack next week. That's what he wants to do. He wants to still work with Tommy and Christy to a degree. And so, taking Cliff's advice, he wants to support Tommy and Christy and help them target the other couples. Unfortunately for Nick, he doesn't realize that Tommy is the most anti-betray my allies person, and that's not going to work. But still, it's progress. So he tells Nicole he wants to backdoor Nick, Jack, and he also gives her the heads up as he's trying to build this new relationship with her, make amends. He says, I'm going to tell you something. You can't tell anyone. Sis is targeting you. This is the start of a strange, definitely not beautiful friendship. Sam pitches to Jackson that Christy is the devil and she must go. She's been working against you for a while. She didn't want to use her power on you. Freaks Jackson out. He runs to Holly. She freaks out. She runs to Cliff. Cliff confirms the information. He drops some more in. This is the time. This is the move. 6 shooters is dead. Jackson is pissed that they didn't put up Nicole because now he wants Sam to stay, but they can't keep Sam because Kat is on the block and Kat knows Holly. He wishes they had put Nicole on the block. Things really come to a head when Jack rats Jackson out and Tommy tries to flip the vote against Kat because they know each other. So Sam ultimately is evicted when Tommy's plan to flip the vote fails. Nicole is a vote to evict Sam. So in summary here, Nicole is betrayed by Kat, which actually helps as she works on Tommy and Christy, which inadvertently saves her by the skin of her teeth and by Kat's terrible move. If Kat doesn't volunteer for the block here, Nicole probably goes home. But a little bit of Nicole's work and a little bit of Kat's bad work to her advantage, and she does end up being safe here. Cliff encourages Nick to work with Nicole. Sis is mad at her because she's sis. And then things break wide open, which really clears the path for Nicole for quite a while. This is going to be massive for Nicole. Nicole, I think, played an essential role in helping break up Grateful. Had basically nothing to do with breaking up the 6 shooters. That was more, much more Cliff's work and Kat's work to a degree. But Nicole is going to massively benefit from it, obviously. Nicole is now still targeting Jack and or whoever she needs to continue to break up these big alliances and navigate her way to the end game by herself with Cliff, essentially. Nicole is now being targeted by Sis. Sis actually wants Nicole gone. For the first time in the game, somebody actually wants to target Nicole, and it's Sis. For random Sis reasons. Nicole's influence on the week's outcome is very minor, in the sense that she did help flip Tommy and Christy on her and help get them to really want to work for her, which did end up saving her this week. But they kind of wanted to do that anyway. They were more anti-Sam than they were pro-Nicole, but it did give them some encouragement and some reason to really push as hard as they did. So, minor influence there to save herself. Heading into week 6. Jess is going to win the HOH, and everybody party and celebrate because it's time for Nicole to once again be in a position of relative power. Cliff's Angels come together and they agree they need to evict Jack. They think they can get Jackson and Holly to work with them now that they've split from the main group. Jack and Jackson do go on the block. Nicole bonds with Holly over how much they like Cliff and how sad they are that the other side does not like Cliff. Jess wins the veto. Nicole is upset that Christy and Sis were nudging each other and making fun of Cliff when he went to grab the arrows during the veto competition. But Nick is acting sketchy this week. He's running back and forth. He's playing both sides. And Jess is not having it. Kat is not having it. Nicole, not super having it, but she had kind of started this bonding of back with Nick last week. And so she's trying to see it from Nick's perspective. And she says that her theory is that Nick is just trying to play both sides. He's trying to be covered by both sides. And you know what? She doesn't blame him. She would be doing the same thing. She has done the same thing in the past. But it's not really enough to convince Jess and Kat. So they just completely stonewall Nick. Nick goes to Nicole. He's like, what's going on? Why are they acting this way? Nicole says, look, they don't trust you. She gives him the heads up. She decides to confide in him a little bit, work on this relationship. She says, I was defending you, but because look, I understand you're just playing your own game. It's fine. But you gotta watch out. Jess was considering backdooring you. Nick is not pleased, but he appreciates the heads up from Nicole, and they continue to develop their relationship over the week. This is about the time that Nick starts seeing Nicole as his number one, cuz. Which could have been very beneficial to Nicole, but didn't really turn out to be too much. She starts really sticking up for him with Jess and Kat, but they're still not having it. And Nick, Nicole, and Cliff come together and discuss working together as a bit of a team, which is really going to help save Cliff the following week. Jack is going to try and charm Nicole for her vote to stay. It's not going to work. Cliff lets Nicole know that Jack has offered him a deal of safety. 3 weeks of safety. Nicole responds, what is he, God? Jack is evicted. Nicole is a vote to evict him. So in summary here for week six, Nicole spreads out a little bit. She bonds with Holly and Jackson. She starts working with Nick. She maintains her spot in Cliff's Angels. She's positioned really well now that the six shooters are primed to start their war with each other. And things are looking a little bit better for Nicole, even though she's not quite as active this week. At this point in the game, Nicole is targeting Christy and Tommy. Those are her targets. She would put those two up on the block if she won. Nicole's being targeted by, once again, nobody. Sis is over it. Sis is now focused on Cliff because she's now Sis is mad at Cliff because he turned down a deal with Jack. Nicole's influence on the week, moderate. She was in Cliff's Angels. She worked on the plan. She was working relationships. She made sure that the vote stayed on Jack. She was a decent part of what was happening throughout the week. Heading into week 7, Tommy is going to win the HOH. Nick quickly lets her know that he thinks that Cliff and Kat will be going on the block. This freaks Nicole out because those are two of her closer allies at this point. So she lets Kat and Cliff know that she thinks that Nick told her that he thinks that they're going to go on the block. Kat, though, then immediately rats Nicole out to Christy and Tommy, who then run it back to Nick, who then goes and later chastises Nicole for exposing what he said to Kat. Tommy also uses this information to turn Nicole against Kat. Nicole is pissed that Kat exposed what she told her, and that's going to be important as Nicole struggles to decide what to do with her vote by the end of the week. We then get America's field trip, and Nicole is way on board to vote Christy out if she stays on the block. Kat and Cliff are also nominated alongside alongside Christy. And this is when Nick starts pitching the idea of a 6 deal, a final 6 deal. The final 6 deal is himself, Tommy, Sis, Cliff, Nicole, and Christy. Final 6 deal. Most people are kind of like, Maybe. But it's frustrating Nicole. Nicole is actually the most opposed to this deal of anyone. She's frustrated because she feels like Nick is trying to pressure her to pick a side. Nick wants her to work with Tommy and Christy. She doesn't really want to. She would prefer to stick with kind of like the Cliff and Jess, and doesn't want to have to abandon them. She would love to just take Christy out this week if possible. So Nick tries to then use some information that he's found out via Tommy, and he lets Nicole know, because Nicole was unaware of how much in danger she was during Holly's HOH week. He lets her know that Holly actually really wanted to backdoor Nicole during her HOH, and Tommy and Christy were the ones that blocked it. Nicole is kind of skeptical about this information because it's coming from Nick. So she goes and she talks to Tommy about it, who was the one who spread it in the first place. And Tommy, of course, confirms the information. And that really starts to get Nicole to question Holly. She's really starting to... She had felt like she had been bonding with Holly the previous week, but now she feels like maybe it was a lie. Unfortunately, Nicole is going to talk with Kat and her allies about this, and Kat is a rat and runs it to Holly, who and tells her, you can't trust Nicole. Nicole is not to be trusted. Don't trust her. She's no good. Again, the same week that Kat claims that she was more loyal to more loyal to Nicole than Holly. So Christy is going to push the story as well. Then Tommy is going to win the veto. Nicole pitches a plan to Jess and Kat to get Holly on the block. If they can convince Tommy to use the veto on Cliff and put Holly on the block, then they can take Holly out of the game. Everything will be fine. Kat says, no! No! Don't like that plan. And Jess chimes in with, Christy is a straight shooter. Nicole afterwards tells the cameras, oh, what great allies she has. She says, oh man, I don't know if I can trust Nick. I'm sorry, America, that I can't win anything. I'm really concerned about Kat reporting to Tommy and protecting Holly. I really hope I didn't screw up my game by telling Kat that I want to put Holly on the block. Nick pitches his final six plan to Nicole again, now that Christy is essentially going to be safe. She's still not sure about working with them. She doesn't believe that Nick is going to take her to the end. Nick is like, what? You're my number one though, cuz. Come on. How could you think that? They both agree they're keeping Cliff. She tells Cliff that she's keeping him. At this point in the game, she's concerned because she feels like Kat's leaving, so she still has Cliff, she has Jess, she has Nick. Those are her allies. Those are the people that she can actually rely on to some degree. Her concern is that two of those allies are targeting each other. Nick is going after Jess, and Jess is going after Nick. She doesn't know how to stop them from targeting each other. Not only that, but she's trying to pitch to keep both Cliff and Kat safe, and Kat's turning that down. Jess is talking about how Christy's a straight shooter. Nick is pitching to work with Tommy and Christy. And then after all of that, Jess comes to her and she says, Nicole, I've got an idea. And I really think that ideas are things that are important to have. And so what I'm thinking is that what we should do, and doing things are really important. So what I think my idea of what we should do is work with Tommy and Christy. Everyone apparently wants to work with Tommy and Christy. So Nicole is kind of in a weird spot. She eventually is going to start to campaign against Kat to Christy a little bit. Says she's too close to Holly. She tries to make peace with Jess and Nick, but is unsuccessful. Holly now wants Nicole on the block next to Nick next week after all of the information she's gotten from Kat about Nicole. She still does not realize that Tommy and Christy are gunning for her. Then Kat makes an emotional plea for Nicole's vote, and it lands. Makes Nicole second guess keeping Cliff. She really wants Kat to be able to fulfill her storyline and redeem herself in the eyes of America. She talks to Jess, and they both agree that they should keep Kat. She believes Kat will evict Jackson. She believes in her. They both believe that Kat will evict Jackson. Remember when I said the Christie thing was her worst move? Luckily, this is just considering a bad move. Nicole does talk to Cliff about being torn. He explains the 6 deal and how it's a go and how it's best for their games. Nicole thinks about it some more. She just feels terrible that she's leaving Jess out to dry, so she goes and she talks to Jess and she explains the situation. Jess freaks out. Chaos ensues. While chaos is ensuing, Nicole is going to lock in the deal with Christy and Tommy and then tells Kat that she is evicting her, which causes more chaos. Nicole does escape the fallout, however, because Jess pretends that she knew this information because she's really smart, actually, and she can figure things out, guys. I do not believe for a second that Jess intentionally withheld Nicole's part in it. I really feel like Jess was just trying to be like, you think I don't see what's happening? People do that all the time. They get information from a source and then they go, like I didn't know this. I knew this. I saw it. So luckily for Nicole, her name does not get dragged into it. She then helps create an excuse, which is that Jess overheard the 6 deal being made, and that's how she figured it out. Kat is really disappointed in Nicole and Cliff. Disappointed me? I believed in you, Cliff. I believed in us. In the process, Jess is going to rat Nicole out for not liking Christy and Sis making fun of Cliff during that veto competition. Nicole has to do damage control there, but it does mostly fall on Holly. Kat is also going to expose Cliff's angels, which Nicole again has to do damage control for, mostly with Nick, who is upset that she didn't tell him about it, but she successfully does the damage control. Nicole, very underrated when it comes to how good she is at damage control. She often found herself in spots where she was totally thrown under the bus, exposed, used as a scapegoat, targeted by everyone. Nobody trusted her. And she always managed to convince people to trust her again. Damage control is top notch when it comes to Nicole. So she actually comes away, again, completely clean from this whole big blow up, and she's fine. Except the only people she is not clean with, Jess and Kat. Jess in particular. The one person she didn't do damage control with, because why would she think she would need to, is the person that she told about the thing to look out for her. Jess is the most upset with Nicole of anybody left in the house. So Jess and Kat discuss how disappointed they are in Nicole, and they can't wait for Nick to betray her and put her on the block, because that's what she'll deserve. Kat is also going to tell Nicole that her students are going to be disappointed in her. She's just following a man, doing what he says. Makes Nicole very upset. Kat is evicted. Nicole does vote to evict her. In summary, here in week 7, Nicole suddenly found herself in the middle of the entire house. Basically, everybody wanted to work with her. She had Nick trying to pull her in with this 6 deal. She had Jess trying to pull her in to work with Tommy and Christy. She had Cliff obviously working with her, Nick working tightly with her. Holly and Jackson were trying to pull her in as a vote. And obviously Kat was trying to pull her in. Every single person in the house was trying to pull Nicole in at this point, even Sis. So Ultimately, she had to choose a side, and as she got closer to Nick, she also ultimately decided to choose to work with Cliff and Nick and that 6 deal. And with that decision, she ultimately lost Jess's loyalty and support. Not that she had that much loyalty or support from Jess to begin with, but regardless, Holly and Jackson also are people that she lost in this decision, but she remained in a strong position moving forward because there were much bigger targets than her for Jackson and Holly moving forward. She did make a huge blunder telling Jess about the deal, but she completely escaped from the fallout, so kind of washes out in the end. At this point in the game, Nicole is targeting Jackson and Holly. She will stay true to that deal for now. Nicole is being targeted by Jess and Holly. Jess potentially as her main target. Yes, you heard that right. Holly indirectly. Holly would potentially put Nicole on the block next to Nick, with Nick as the target. Nicole's influence on the week is pretty major in the sense that she was the swing vote, though she obviously would have preferred to not see either of them go, so not major in that sense. So heading into week 8, Jackson is going to pull out a must-win HOH, and Cliff immediately gets to work. He does damage control with him, rats out the other 6, says that they were the instigators of the deal, and that he would love to work with Jackson moving forward. It was only a 1-week deal, so he is free and clean. He's free to make new deals. So Jackson and Cliff agree to work together. Cliff asks that Jackson keep Nicole safe this week. That is his only stipulation. Jackson agrees, which causes Jackson to be unsure of who to use as a pawn if Cliff and Nicole aren't options. He eventually lands on Sis. He says it makes sense to move forward with Cliff and Nicole. And while Holly likes Cliff, she doesn't really agree with that direction. She does not trust Nicole. So, Christy and Sis are nominated. Cliff and Jackson talk more about working with each other. Cliff says, we need to pull Nicole in. She's the only person I'm not going to turn on. Jackson agrees. He does eventually get Holly into a room with them where they agree they are going to work together. Holly does feel good about it, but she still doesn't want to turn on Tommy. She still doesn't want to get Christy out this week. She wants Nick gone. She doesn't like Nicole's connection to Nick. That's one of the reasons why she doesn't trust Nicole. So, at this point in the game, Jess is going to completely throw Nicole under the bus to Christy and Sis. She says that they need to try and get Nicole nominated and evict her. Because, I don't know, she did a thing. She told her about a thing. Terrible. Jackson's going to win the veto. And Jackson and Holly really start to question Cliff about Nicole. They don't think they can trust her. She continues to talk to Nick. She's very dangerous. They don't like it. But Cliff again vouches for her. He says, "Believe me, you do not need to worry about her. It's Jess you should be talking about." Did you see Jess talking with Christy? You see that? She was talking with her all night. You can't trust Christy. If Jackson and Holly had their choice, they wanted to work with Jess, but Cliff continues to push for Nicole to be the one that they work with, and he turns their eye on Jess, gets them suspicious of her relationship with Christy. Christy and Jess are formulating a plan to get Nicole evicted this week. Meanwhile, Nicole is concerned about trying to find a way to protect Jess from Nick. She still trusts Jess. Not good, Nicole. Christy makes the pitch to Jackson, who doesn't really see the point of taking Nicole out when they can just take Nick out. So it doesn't really work. Cliff and Nicole discuss what to do moving forward. They're in a good spot to stay safe, but they don't have any moves that they can make. They're not sure where to go from here. They're obviously not going to target Jess, but if they don't target Jess, then who do they target? Are they going to target Nick? Nicole doesn't want to. They can target Tommy and Christy. They could, but does that give Jackson and Holly too much power? They're not sure. So they don't really know what to do. They probably should just throw the HOH, but doesn't feel right doing that, especially when they don't have many wins on their record. Then Taco Tuesday happens. Manifest the truth, cuz! That's about it. Nicole and Tommy bond over comforting Nick. They want to work together moving forward if they can. Holly is worried about Nicole. She really doesn't trust her, especially after Taco Tuesday. She's in there comforting Nick. Holly still pushing back on allowing Nicole into their group. She really wants to get Nick out this week, or at the very least keep Christy around to help get Nick out the following week. At that point, Holly actually makes some progress. She convinces Jackson to flip the vote against Sis. Cliff and Nicole find out that the vote may be flipping, and they go, you know what? That's fine. It's probably best to just go along with it. Nick and Christy fighting is not bad for us. If Nick and Christy reunite and they take a shot at Jackson and Holly, that's not bad for us either. So we'll just go along with it. Christy is pitching, though, that she will put up Nick and Nicole if she stays. Nicole says to Christy that she's not Nick's puppet and she will play her own game. But it's still not enough. Christy's still pitching that she's putting Nicole on the block. Cliff goes to Christy and says, look, if you want my vote to stay, you can't put Nicole on the block. That's my condition. Christy says, if that's what it takes, then I will not put Nicole on the block. I promise. I'm on board. So Cliff and Nicole decide. Cliff and Nicole discuss that their target moving forward is going to be Tommy. They take Tommy out. Nick moves to them. Christy is isolated. They want to take Tommy out if they can. That's going to be their target moving forward. Sis is evicted, and Nicole is a vote to evict her. In summary here for week 8, Nicole was dragged down by her association with Nick this week, but Cliff worked very hard to keep her safe and include her in a new alliance with Jackson and Holly, and prevent Christy from putting her from using her as a pawn, putting her on the block. In the meantime, though, Nicole is going to remain unaware that Jess is now against her, and is kind of reluctantly being torn in a few different directions as she struggles with where to go, and Cliff seems to be the person really stepping forward and keeping her safe. Nicole, at this point, is targeting Tommy and Christy. Tommy first. Nicole is being targeted by nobody, once again. Not very targeted this game, Nicole. Nicole's influence on the week was basically nothing. No influence. Week 9. Holly is going to win the HOH. Cliff and Nicole would like to see Tommy nominated, hopefully evicted, but Holly wants Nick out. America's Prankster happens. Nick is America's Prankster. Nick and Christy go on the block. Nick chooses to put up Christy. Holly chooses to put up Nick. Nicole tries to tell Nick that Tommy would be his best shot at staying if Christy comes down. This is Nicole trying to get Nick to put Tommy up on the block. She actually makes some progress in turning Nick against Tommy, saying that Tommy is potentially working with Jackson and Holly, and that he can't be trusted. Jackson is going to, though, win the veto, and he's going to keep the nominations the same, meaning that that Nick and Christy remain on the block together. Nicole is going to spend the rest of the week trying to campaign for Nick to stay, but very unsuccessfully. She can't even get Cliff on board. Jackson and Holly make a pitch to her to make an official Final Four, but she does avoid agreeing concretely. She avoids that handshake, for now at least. She tells the cameras she knows Cliff is closer to Jackson and Holly than she is, but she doesn't really have any other place to go if Nick leaves. She's running out of options. Nicole continues to try to campaign for Nick. She throws Tommy under the bus, which does temporarily get Jackson and Holly questioning him, but at the end of the day, it's just not going to work. Nick is going to be evicted. Nicole reluctantly is going to vote to evict him. So, in summary here, Nicole continues to be reluctantly kept safe via Cliff and the alliance with Jackson and Holly. She tries and fails to keep Nick around and is really starting to lose her options in the game and her agency in the game. At this point, she is still targeting Tommy and Christy, still being targeted by nobody. And her influence on this week's outcome is nothing. Week 10. Jackson is going to win the HOH. His reason for winning this HOH is that he thinks that Tommy and Christy are gunning for Nicole. He thinks that he's keeping Cliff and Nicole safe. In reality, he's keeping himself and Holly safe. His target is Jess. Nicole doesn't like that. She would prefer to see Christy go. So her and Cliff try and fail to convince Jackson to go in that direction. Ultimately, it becomes clear that Jess and Christy are going on the block, at which point Jess decides it's a great time to tell Nicole that she feels played by her. Nicole's response, what? This would be like if Steve told Becky halfway through the game, "You're my mortal enemy." Becky would be like, what? Honestly, even worse than that, to be real frank here, because that was just kind of funny. Nicole doesn't understand. She's kind of mad at Jess, but she still wants Jess to stay this week. So she makes a pitch to Holly to evict Christy. She says that Christy is in the middle, in between Tommy and Jess. If you remove Christy, then you separate them both as individuals. Holly is completely convinced. She is fully on board. As soon as she stops arguing with Jackson about whatever it was they were arguing at the time, you can go listen to the Holly recap about that. She'll pitch that to Jackson. Unfortunately, the veto is going to be won in between that time. It never gets pitched to Jackson, and Tommy is the one that's going to win the veto. He's going to use it on Christy. So that plan, dead in the water. Nicole is now concerned that Cliff is going to be the one to go home because he is going to be going on the block next to Jess. So she starts working on Tommy and Christy. Her and Cliff expose that Jackson and Holly are the middlemen and trying to play them both against each other. Tommy and Christy respond with, "Yeah, we know. And don't worry, we're targeting them." Holly and Jackson are finally starting to trust Nicole now that Nick is gone. She's finally starting to put in work with them. They do make their deal official, and everything is fine and dandy in the Final Four land between Nicole, Cliff, Holly, and Jackson. Cliff and Nicole discuss which side they want to side with, which pair they want to side with in the double eviction. They run through the pros and cons. They're both dangerous in their own ways. Ultimately, they decide that they're going to side with Jackson and Holly because Tommy and Christy are very threatening in mental competitions. Jackson and Holly less so in mental competitions. They think that the mental competitions are coming up, and so they think that Jackson and Holly are going to be less threatening in that, and also, they don't have to break a deal that way. If they stick with their deal, then they should be kept safe at the final five, whereas if they went with Tommy and Christy, then they would be in danger at the final five, especially if Jackson was the one to go. They feel like Tommy and Christy would choose Holly over them at the final five, and that would not be good for them. So, with all of that in mind, they decide this is where we're going to side with Jackson and Holly. Tommy and Christy do make a play to get Nicole's vote against Cliff. After it stresses her out for a little while, it ultimately fails. Nicole and Cliff then rat Tommy and Christy out to a pissed off Jackson and Holly, expose the fact that Tommy and Christy are gunning for them, and that leads us to the double eviction where Jess is evicted first, with Nicole as a vote to evict her. So in summary here for week 10, Nicole makes a play to get Christy evicted and halfway succeeds before it's stopped in its tracks by the veto. Her and Cliff then set themselves up to be safe for the double and decide they are sticking with Jackson and Holly for now. Nicole is targeting at this point Christy and Tommy. She's being targeted by nobody. And her influence on the week is fairly minor. She was the swing vote, but ultimately wasn't able to get Tommy or Christy evicted. That leads us into the double eviction, and this is where we are seeing the decision where Nicole wins the HOH, and she decides to follow through with the plan. She evicts Christy. Now, a lot of people, now that Nicole has lost part 2 of the final 3 HOH, are saying, ha! Here is the time that she made the mistake. To which I respond, sure. You know, hindsight being 2020, probably should have gone the other direction. Knowing what we know now, it probably would have worked out better for her. But very difficult to predict the change in competitions here in the final stretch. I do think that Tommy and Christy were bigger mental threats than Jackson and Holly. And if you are not predicting that they are going to be lots of physical competitions, then I think they made the right call. It did keep them safe at Final 5, whereas otherwise Cliff would have gone home. And honestly, with how physical these competitions were, let's be real honest here. Cliff and Nicole never were going to make it to the final two. Didn't matter what they decided. It was never going to happen. They were never going to win these competitions. They lost them all pretty dramatically. It's just the way it is. So Christy's evicted. Cliff, Nicole, Jackson, and Holly reaffirm their final four. Nicole is going to comfort, though Nicole is going to go comfort Tommy and tell him that, look, go out there and win this HOH. Nicole already thinking about trying to keep Tommy safe and split up the couple. Unfortunately, though, Jackson goes out there and wins the HOH. He puts up Cliff and Tommy. Then Nicole wins the veto, and she decides she's taking Cliff down, forcing Holly on the block. Now, Nicole wants to evict Holly. She has to break up the showmans. So she talks to Tommy, who agrees to go after Jackson, though Cliff is concerned that Tommy is a much better competitor than Holly and isn't sure that he wants to go in that direction. But Nicole is convinced and eventually convinces Cliff that this is the way to go. And so that's what they decide. They are going to keep Tommy and evict Holly. However, Jackson overhears Tommy's pitch, and there's a big blow up. Nicole eventually capitulates to Cliff's desire to keep Holly, and Holly agrees to throw the HOH. Tommy is going to be evicted, and Nicole votes to evict him. You're killing me! Bye, Tommy. So in summary here in week 11, Nicole adds some wins to her resume, nearly makes a big move, but is scared off by Jackson and Cliff. At this point in the game, she is targeting Jackson, and she is being targeted by Jackson and Holly. It's the worst position in the game for Nicole that she has been in. Her influence over the week was somewhat significant in the sense that she made the call, but it was others' influence over her that ultimately put her in this spot. This was definitely, if we're talking about Nicole's mistakes, this was a far greater mistake in my eyes than the previous week's decision to go with Tommy and Christy. It was a hard and tough decision to make, and again, if we're looking at this, there was no way she was ever going to win these competitions, but it would have been, I think, an easier path for her in particular if she had kept Tommy around. Maybe there's a chance that Tommy beats Jackson in the Final Four veto. Probably not, but maybe. And then maybe Jackson decides to evict Tommy instead of Cliff or something along those lines. Who knows? This is probably the key decision for Nicole, losing the game. Nicole in particular. However, I will once again redirect it back to, at the end of the day, it's mostly the challenges. It's mostly the fact that these are very physical and she just was never going to win them. She just needed to be better at competitions, unfortunately. And that just was not the case. So we head into week 12. Holly does throw the HOH to Nicole, which does save her from eviction at Final Four as Jackson wins the veto. Jackson would prefer to take Nicole out, but Nicole is safe, and so ultimately he decides he is evicting Cliff. Nicole and Cliff do try to pitch to Jackson that they will be bitter jurors if he makes this decision, but he does it anyway. Cliff is gone, heading into the Final Three. Nicole loses part 1. Nicole loses part 2. She is locked out of part 3. Holly and Jackson have reaffirmed that they are taking each other to the end, and just like that, Nicole has probably lost the game. And that's Nicole's game across Big Brother 21. I think if we're looking at Nicole's game as a whole, I think my guess would be that a lot of people would be surprised at how much she was doing throughout the season. There was a lot that she was, like, there was never a time where Nicole was completely in the dark. When you looked at Holly's game, there were lots of times where she was just kind of floating along, distracted by her relationships with Jackson and Kat. Whereas Nicole was almost always a key component of each week, trying to do things, often failing, but sometimes succeeding. Like I said, she was a key component of Kemi being saved week 1. She was a key component of Grateful breaking up. She then, even the week that she probably had the least amount of influence, the week that she was most in danger, Holly's HOH week, she still did have a minor role in keeping herself safe, even though she didn't quite realize how much danger she was actually in at that point. For a good portion of the game, it was Cliff that was finding a lot more success in the strategic maneuvering, and it was Cliff that kind of dragged her along and kept her safe through a huge stretch of weeks there. But it was her relationship with Cliff that got her in that position in the first place. Then it's ultimately Cliff's desire to get rid of Tommy that she lays down to, which is probably her worst move of the game. If you don't, if we look at the 3 worst moves of the game, it's probably prematurely admitting to Christy that she would vote Jack out. It's the whole situation with Cliff and Tommy and them, but again, that was a really tough decision to begin with. And then the whole thing with Jess and blowing that up, but I think if you look at Nicole's game, it's basically a situation where she entered the game, she did not fit in with the majority. It was a tough road for her, and she made a lot of calls along the way. A lot of them were correct calls. She was always thinking strategically. She was always trying to maneuver. She was always working against the odds. And time again, she managed to beat the odds. She made lots of mistakes, but she always managed to recover from them. Her damage control was excellent. Her social game was excellent. People really wanted to like Nicole in the house, no matter what happened, no matter what she did, no matter what position they were in. They always came back to her, and they always ended up working with her again. If we're comparing her to Holly, I don't think it's even that close. I think that Nicole has played the more active, the more strategic, and better game overall. Holly, was certainly better at incorporating herself into the majority alliance and things like that. But Nicole was a much more active player. She had to work against a lot more, and she found a lot more success than Holly did in terms of her goals that she set and things along those lines. Also, she had to work without having won almost any competitions. Her allies only won 2 HOHs throughout the season. Then she won 1 HOH that gave her power. That's a grand total of 3 positions where she could have done anything in the game with actual power. One of which was negated by a twist, and so really, when you think about it, a lot to work against. But that does not mean that she was not also a very flawed player, and the flaws come in the form of being, in one sense, too trusting, and in another sense, not trusting enough. She trusted in Kat far too much, and Kat was a rat against her for a long period of time. Kat was really working against her. If she was able to recognize what Kat was doing, she probably would have been able to work around that. Kat was the one thing that Nicole never could see. Again, Nicole was always on top of the lay of the house and where things stood. Which is not something that most people can say. I think only Cliff can say that he had a better read on the house for most of the game. And then by the end of the game, Nicole was having a better read on the house than even Cliff was. But the one thing she never saw was Kat and her connection to Holly. Even at the end, Nicole was believing that Kat would not go after Jackson and was actually more loyal to her and Jess. Then after that, she trusted in Jess too much, and in some ways didn't trust Cliff enough. And then in some other ways, trusted Cliff too much later on. It was a lot of times her emotions that got in her way. She really considered making a lot of really boneheaded moves, ultimately never did. But there were a lot of times she was going back and forth. She was seen as weak, and that was one of the reasons why she was in such a dire position to win so many competitions in the end game. So, like I said, flawed game. I think that if this season had been played 3 years ago, when they were still doing what they had normally done up until that point, where the end game is mostly mental competitions, I think that Nicole is a winner of this game. I genuinely think that. Nicole or Cliff, to be honest. Probably Cliff, but whatever. Nicole or Cliff are probably the winners of this game. However, that's not how Big Brother works. Things have shifted. I tweeted this out before, but the percentage of physical competitions in the season has gone up significantly in the last few years, particularly in the end game. I went back, I did some calculations. Obviously, this requires some amount of judgment call in terms of what was the primary component of the competition. For example, Nicole's HOH win in the double did require a hockey thing, and there was a puzzle. I count that more of like a skill competition, which is not something I count as physical. It doesn't really require much physical ability, so that's not a physical competition. However, the Final Four Veto, which required this big slingshot that required a lot of physicality to maneuver, a lot of stamina running the balls back and forth, that Nicole didn't have too much of a shot to beat somebody like Jackson in that, even though she knew the questions better. The questions were super, super easy. The mental component of it was really minimal, so I count that as a physical competition. So you go back, you look at the competitions, the end game competitions from week 8 onwards. In Big Brother 17, 17% of them were physical. In Big Brother 18, 15% of them were physical. This was pretty typical of Big Brother up until this point. Starting with Big Brother 19, we see a big jump. They double. The amount of physical competitions doubles to 33% after week 8. And then the next season, the very next season, they basically double again. And Big Brother 20, 55% of the end game competitions were physical. And in Big Brother 21, up until part 2 of the HOH, final 3 HOH, 61% of them were physical. That's 4 times as much as Big Brother 18. We can talk all day long about what decision Nicole and Cliff did or didn't make that ultimately cost them the game. But if we're talking about the real reason, the actual most significant reason why they lost, this is it. It's because there is a shift in the end game, and they didn't recognize it. They anticipated mental competitions. We anticipated mental competitions. We didn't recognize it either. I noticed it last season. I thought that I thought that trend would continue to a degree, but that the end game competitions would still be there'd be enough mental competitions that they'd be able to take out Jackson and Holly. That was not the case. And ultimately, that's what cost them the game, more so than anything else. I think to say otherwise is far too, results oriented, and that does not mean that they did not play very flawed games. I would not have called them great winners if either of them had won the game. But they were playing in that role of, Steve, Ian to a degree, like Nicole to a degree. These people, these sort of like the nerdier sort of super fan archetype that we always saw, stealing the wins from other people. That seems to be going away because the competitions are shifting in a different direction, and now we're starting to see the more athletic players dominate the end game. I wonder if this trend will continue, but if you're going to be on next season, it's something that you need to pay attention to. Do not follow in the same footsteps as Cliff and Nicole, expecting mental competitions at the end, because that is not a guarantee anymore. It used to be, not so the case anymore, so be aware of that. All right. Tomorrow, I will be discussing Jackson's game. Jackson, I do believe, played a better game than Nicole. Ultimately, I think that Nicole is probably, Nicole has her positive aspects in her game. I do think she played a much stronger game than Holly, but Jackson is a bit more well-rounded in the sense that he can integrate himself into the majority. He is a very social guy in that sense. He also can manage individual relationships. He's also sneakily strategic and would often make the correct decisions strategically. Not quite as socially aware or just like even in generally aware of situations. Nicole often had better reads than Jackson did, but that didn't really matter because ultimately his competition ability is so far above Nicole that it makes up for any faults that he has below Nicole. And we'll talk about all of that when it comes to Jackson's review tomorrow. So make sure you tune in for that at 11 a.m. Eastern. I will, of course, be on the recap tonight to recap tonight's episode of Big Brother 21. The final roundtable that will take place during the season will be tomorrow night at 9. Oh, God. Might want to move that to a little bit earlier if I can, but probably not. 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night for the final. No, maybe we can, actually. Stay tuned for the time on the roundtable tomorrow night. I'm going to be heading to LA early Tuesday morning, so we'll see if I can push that up a little bit. So stay tuned for that one, but it should be a good one. We're going to do the final stock watch during the season. It'll be a lot of fun. Make sure you tune in for that. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. Find me on Twitter at Armstrong Taran, Instagram Taran_Armstrong. I apologize that they're all different, but for whatever reason, my unique name is still not quite unique enough. So yeah, that's what I got for you. I'm sad. This is not the ending that we wanted in a lot of ways, but we are going to see likely a Jackson and Holly final 2, and we'll just have to see what the jury thinks of this. Which one they are going to award the win to. I know it's sparked a lot of debate in the sense that Jackson certainly, deserves it on gameplay, but that maybe on a personal level, maybe not. And a lot of people are torn in that way. We'll just have to wait and see. Should be an exciting finish. Should be an interesting finale. So that's what I got for you. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you, Nicole. We'll see you next time.